Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into Ezekiel, the 40th chapter. And what you see before you here is pretty much from around Ezekiel, the 40th chapter to the end of the book. For the most part, it's a description of, the temple and the ordinances, that the priests would keep and so on and so forth, which you can even also watch a video. I mean, there's been multiple videos done, but I know one that I also saw was done by the elder Yashawamba, on Ezekiel, the 40th chapter, and on, not talking about the kingdom of heaven, all right? Because, you have, as you read this, you might think that it's a description of the temple and the kingdom and all of that, but that's not the case, okay? In actuality, remember that at this point in time that Ezekiel is receiving this vision, which he even gives you the date here. At this point in time, the temple was destroyed, all right? Jerusalem, the walls, all that was broken down and burnt up. And so the Lord gave him this vision, told him to pretty much tell those that were there, all right? But this was basically to show that had they not been disobedient, and followed the ways of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, this is really how things would have been looking, in terms of how the temple, the design, and ordinances and so on and so forth. So rather than just read, because like I said, the 40th chapter from the first verse to the last verse is really just a description of this temple. Okay, and so rather than just read it, I was able to find here a video, okay, that was done. I'm not sure who this individual is, but hopefully there's no copyright on this video. But in this clip here, he does a pretty good job of this is like a 3D model based on the blueprints described in here. Now, I'm not saying that this video is exactly what this looked like. This is exactly what Ezekiel saw. We don't know that. In fact, this is just a depiction or a visual to help you see, kind of what this could possibly have looked like that Ezekiel was seeing. Sometimes it's easier to picture what you're reading if you can get a nice visual to go with it. Okay, so with that being said, let's go into it. Now, what I'm gonna do is, and what I like about this video is it has the verses, and it shows the model here according to the verses. So as the video plays through, I'm gonna read the verses here, and then we'll sort of do the correlation in there. And Lord willing, this will be helpful, if you want to kind of get an idea of what these measurements would look like. Now, there are certain parts in here when it talks about the measurements of like a cubit and so on. There's if you look into it, there's estimations of what the actual measurement of a cubit is and so on and so forth. But this video is not to get into the details of that. So this is Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1. And it reads, "In the 5th and 20th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, after that the city was smitten, in the selfsame day the hand of the Lord Yahweh was upon me, and brought me thither." Now, remember that Ezekiel was taken captive prior to, he was a part of, I think, either the first or second batch of exiles. So he was taken captive to Babylon prior to the Babylonians coming and destroying Jerusalem. So that's why he starts off by saying that in the 5 and 20th year, which is the 25th year of our captivity, which I believe along with him you had Jeconiah, which was also taken as well, right? And a bunch of other Israelites were taken as captives. So 25 years, he's saying, right? 25 years after he was taken captive, in the beginning of that year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, after that the city was smitten. So Ezekiel was taken captive roughly around 597 BC, and Jerusalem was destroyed roughly around 586 BC. Because remember, when you're dealing with BC, time moves going into the future, the time is moving down. Okay, so when you go from 597 to 587, that's 10 years into the future. Okay, as you get closer to zero, you're coming more and more towards the future. But in obviously AD, after zero, as the numbers increase, as the dates increase, you go more into the future. Okay, so don't be confused by that. Anyway, that's about 11 years, right? That's about 11 years difference. And if you look it up, you'll see, let's see, when was Ezekiel? Right, so roughly around 597 BC, Ezekiel was taken captive. And when was Jerusalem destroyed by Babylon? Right around 586 BC. If you do the math, it's 11 years, right? 597 minus 586, that's 11. Okay, so that's pretty much what he's saying here. 25 years into his captivity, which is equivalent to 14 years after the destruction of the city, which was Jerusalem. In the self-same day, the hand of the Lord Yahweh was upon me and brought me thither. So basically, the Lord is about to show him this vision. In the visions of God brought he me into the land of Israel. So in this vision that he received, the Lord took him to the land of Israel and set me upon a very high mountain, by which was the frame of a city on the south. So upon this mountain that Ezekiel was on, when he looked southward, he could see the frame of a city, and that's where this video begins. Now, I put it on mute because there's some background music in here, and we all know how YouTube gets. When you have any kind of music in here, they want to copyright it to the maximum. So we're not going to play this. We're not going to have the audio here. But as you can see, Ezekiel 40:1. So the frame goes into like the structure, right? The outline. And that's what he says. That's what Ezekiel says he saw, right? There was something like the structure of a city. Yeah, this is how I'll do it. Which the translation that is being used in the video, I don't believe is the KJV. So the wording might be slightly different, but you'll get the idea, right? So we just read verse 2. Let's go ahead. And like I said, this is just a 3D model based on the description in the scriptures, right? So now he says here, verse 5. Let's get that. Wall outside the house all round about. So let's keep on reading here. Verse 3, and he brought me thither, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand and a measuring reed. And he stood in the gate. So he basically saw an angel which had a line of flax and a reed in his hand, and he was standing by the gate, which is the entrance. And the man said unto me, Son of man, behold with thine eyes, so look, and hear with thine ears, and set thy heart upon all that I will show thee. So pay attention, basically. For to the intent that I might shew them unto thee art thou brought hither. So the Most High, the angel is telling him that basically you were brought here so you could see this, this vision here. Declare all that thou seest to the house of Israel. Now it goes into the measurements, right? So verse 5, and behold, a wall on the outside of the house round about, and in the man's hand a measuring reed of 6 cubits long by the cubit and an hand breadth. So he basically sees this wall surrounding the house, right? And that's what is being depicted here. Now, I think that the reason it looks so short is probably so you could see the dimensions of the actual wall. But like I said, this is not the exact replica. It's just a depiction. Okay. It says here, so he measured the breadth of the building. And when you deal with the terms here, breadth and breadth, mainly you'll see it's kind of like the width in this instance, like how thick or wide it is. 1 reed, and the height 1 reed. So let's keep on going. So you can see here, right, measuring reed of 6 cubits, which as it says, the man's and in the man's hand had a measuring reed of 6 cubits. So you can see the measurements here. All right, verse 6. Then came he unto the gate which looketh toward the east, and went up the stairs thereof, and measured the threshold of the gate. So Ezekiel is in this vision. He's following this angel who has a measuring reed. What is it? What do they call it? A measuring reed. Lucky. He had a measuring reed in his hand. So Ezekiel is following this angel. He's going around. He's measuring different things. He's showing him the different parts. Okay, and that's what's going on here, right? So it says here, then came he unto the gate which looketh towards the east, so the east gate, and went up the stairs thereof. So you can see some nice stairs over here, and measured the threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad, and the other threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad. Let's take a look at that. So you go up the stairs, and here you can see basically how wide is this door, right? It's each door. When you open it, you can see that space right there. So as you can see, threshold of gate 1 reed for both sides. Now, I don't know how accurate these measurements are. I haven't looked into that, which is like the conversion of a reed or whatever measurement we're reading here into our modern day units, feet, and all of those. So, take that with a grain of salt. If you want to look into it further yourself, be my guest. And so now verse 7, and every little chamber was 1 reed long and 1 reed broad, and between the little chambers were 5 cubits. So you can see, so these are considered it's depicted like this. These are the little chambers right here. And you can see it's 1 reed long and 1 reed broad. Okay. And the threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate within was 1 reed. So we're going to get to that. All right, so you see threshold of the gate, 1 reed. All right, and I believe that was probably verse 8. So let's get to that. Verse 8, he measured also the porch of the gate within 1 reed. So let's take a look at that. This is how it's depicted here, the porch. Like I said, when you read this, you can only imagine so much, right? So this is from somebody's imagination based on what they're reading over here. But it's still better than nothing, right? So it says porch of the gate 1 cubit, and like it says, the porch was inward, right? So it's not like the porch was not like the space outward, but it was more in. When you come into the building, you see that little porch area. And that's verse 8. So verse 9, then measured he the porch. So remember, so envision the angel is going around with his measuring reed, and he's measuring all of these things. Okay, and that's why he told Ezekiel, pay attention with your eyes, listen with your ears, and set your mind upon it. Pay attention. Then measured he the porch of the gate 8 cubits, and the posts thereof 2 cubits. So you had the porch, and then the post, which is the side right here, 2 cubits, the side pillars, as it says, 2 cubits, and the porch of the gate was inward. Okay, verse 10, and the little chambers of the gate eastward were 3 on this side. So the east gate, which we're looking through now, the little chambers that were within, it says were 3 on this side and 3 on that side. So on either side, you have 3 chambers here, 3 chambers there. They 3 were of 1 measure, so they were all the same size. And the posts had 1 measure on this side and on that side. So you can see the pillars, same measurements on each side. Okay, verse 11. And he measured the breadth of the entry of the gate. So how wide was the gate? 10 cubits. And the length of the gate, 13 cubits. And you can see right there how long that is right there, or the height. Verse 12, the space also before the little chambers was 1 cubit on this side, and the space was 1 cubit on that side. And the little chambers were 6 cubits on this side and 6 cubits on that side. All right, verse 13. He measured then the gate from the roof of one little chamber to the roof of another. The breadth was 25 cubits, door against door. So basically the breadth or the width, and as you can see right there, 25 cubits. So from one side where the chambers were to the other side where the chambers were was the width of the roof. Verse 14, he made also posts of 60 cubits, even onto the post of the court round about the gate. So side posts right here was at 60 cubits. Now we know a score is 20, right? So 3 times 20 would be 60. So these posts were, here it looks like 60 cubits tall. All right, and it says here, from the entry to the porch. So he made the post of 3 cubits, even onto the post of the court round about the gate. Verse 15, and from the face of the gate of the entrance onto the face of the porch of the inner gate were 50 cubits. So that's pretty much what he just depicted over here. Let's replay that. Right, so from the entrance gate, which is back there, to the porch, which is outer here, the length or the distance between the two was 50 cubits. Verse 16, and there were narrow windows to the little chambers and to their posts within the gate round about. So on this side, I guess these are considered the narrow windows, because you can see the chambers would be within, when you go past these walls. Likewise, the arches and windows were round about inward, and upon each post were palm trees. So let's take a look at that. And you can see those trees over there. Now, I'm sure the way, once again, this is using some like 3D modeling software. But I'm sure that the way it was designed and all of that probably looked different, right? Verse 17, then brought he me into the outward court, and lo, there were chambers, and a pavement made for the court round about. So this being the outward court, all right, it says here, there were chambers and pavement. So the chambers, I would assume, were these rooms. Okay, so there's 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, which is 1, 2, 3, 6. 5 times 6 is 35. So that's a total of 35 chambers round about, right? So then brought he me into the outward court, and lo, there were chambers, and a pavement made for the court round about. So you can see that right there. 30 chambers were upon the pavement. All right, verse 18. And the pavement by the side of the gates over against the length of the gates was the lower pavement. So you can see this right here. Now, like I said, what it exactly looks like, yo no sé. Verse 19. Then he measured the breadth from the forefront of the lower gate onto the forefront of the inner court, without 100 cubits eastward and northward. So as you can see, you have 100 cubits here, 100 cubits here, right? And same thing, 100 cubits here. So the breadth from the forefront of the lower gate onto the forefront of the inner court. So if this is the inner court, these are the gates right here. The distance between the two, 100 cubits, right? Eastward and northward. So here and here. Verse 20 to 22. And the gate of the outward court looked toward the north, and the gate of the outward court that looked toward the north, he measured the length thereof and the breadth thereof. So we would assume that's the north gate. Verse 21, and the little chambers thereof were 3 on this side and 3 on that side. And the posts thereof and the arches thereof were after the measure of the first gate. And the length thereof was 50 cubits, and the breadth 5 and 20 cubits. So basically, it had the same design as the gate toward the east, okay, that we looked at earlier. So you can see a close-up right there. And like I said, right, the little chambers thereof were 3 on this side and 3 on that side. So the same thing that we looked at, you had 3 on one side, 3 on another side. All right, let's finish up verse 22. And the windows and their arches and their palm trees were after the measure of the gate that looketh toward the east. So the first gate that we looked at in this video, this north gate is designed the same way. And they went up onto it by 7 steps, and the arches thereof were before them. And when you actually look up the word arches here, let's see if we can pull this up. Okay. And forgive the size of the screen. I think it's best if it's side by side, so it's easier to take a look at. But let's see, what do we have here? Let's take a look at the Strong's info. Yeah, so you have here portico or colonnade, which if we look this up here, portico. What we got here? So it says a portico is a porch leading to the entrance of a building, or extended as a colonnade. I'm sure those that do, like, you know, either architecture or maybe construction or whatever, like you may have more understanding of these different parts of a house and stuff like that. But with a roof structure over the walkway, supported by columns or enclosed by walls. This idea was widely used in ancient Greece and has influenced many cultures, including most Western cultures, which makes sense. So it kind of looks like this area right here, right? This is a porch leading to the entrance of a building or extended as a colonnade with a roof structure over a walkway. So you come up the steps, and then that little area before you enter the building right there would be the portico or the arches, as we're reading here. So let me go back up. Can I close this? Okay. All right. How do we close this? Let me see. Maybe I just extend this a bit more. Ah, there we go. Close. Cool. So, I mean, I can imagine when you go up these stairs, it's likely talking about maybe the space right there before you enter. But where were we? Verse 22, right? And their windows and their arches and their palm trees were after the measure of the gate that looketh toward the east. And they went up into it by 7 steps, and the arches thereof were before them. Yeah, so, you know, you go up by 7 steps on whichever side, and that little space before the entrance is right there. Verse 23. And the gate of the inner court was over against the gate toward the north and toward the east, and he measured from the gate or from gate to gate 100 cubits. So the gate of the inner court, because remember, this is the outer court, so this would be the inner court. So the gate of the inner court, which is this area here, to the gate of the north, which we just read here, he measured from gate to gate 100 cubits. So the distance between the two would be 100 cubits. Slovakia. All right, verse 24 to 26. After that, he brought me toward the south, and behold, a gate toward the south. And so we just looked at the north, right? So coming down to the south, it says, and he measured the posts thereof and the arches thereof according to these measures. And there were windows in it, and in the arches thereof round about, like those windows. So once again, this design was similar to the one we just looked at, right? Also, you could say these gates had the same design in terms of measurements. And there were windows in it, and in the arches thereof round about, like those windows. The length was 50 cubits, and the breadth 5 and 20 cubits, which is 25 cubits. And there were 7 steps up to it, and the arches thereof were before them, and it had palm trees, one on this side and another on that side upon the post thereof. All right, verse 27 to 31. And there was a gate in the inner court toward the south, and he measured from gate to gate toward the south 100 cubits. Okay, so that would be this gate right here, and I'm sure it's talking about from this gate to that gate. Let's see if he displays that on here. Okay, let's actually go back. Cool. So verse 28, and he brought me to the inner court by the south gate, and he measured the south gate according to these measures. And the little chambers thereof, and the posts thereof, and the arches thereof, so the south gate would be here, right? According to these measures, and there were windows in it, and in the arches thereof round about. It was 50 cubits long and 5 and 20 cubits broad, same measurements. And the arches round about were 5 and 20 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. Cool. And the arches thereof were toward the outer court, and the palm trees were upon the posts thereof, and the going up to it had 8 steps. Verse 32. And he brought me into the inner court toward the east, and he measured the gate according to these measures. And the little chambers thereof, and the posts thereof, and the arches thereof were according to these measures. And there were windows therein, and in the arches thereof round about. It was 50 cubits long, and 5 and 20 cubits broad, which is 25 cubits broad. So you can see right there, same measurements. You have the windows round about, the 3 rooms or chambers on this side and that side. You have the steps, the court, and all of that. Verse 34. And the arches thereof were toward the outward court, and palm trees were upon the posts thereof. So you can see the palm trees right there on this side and on that side, and the going up to it had 8 steps. All right, verse 35. And he brought me to the north gate and measured it according to these measures. The little chambers thereof, the posts thereof, and the arches thereof, and the windows to it round about. The length was 50 cubits, and the breadth 5 and 20 cubits. Once again, the same design. And that's the thing about the scriptures is they don't, everything is sort of recorded, right? It's not like, okay, well, the gate, the inner court, the gate of the inner court that was toward the west looked like the one toward the east, which looked like the one towards the south, which is like the one towards the north, and this is what it was. Like it sort of goes through each one, Like even when you deal with the names, the genealogies, which is very important, there are records in there which tell you this one was the son of this one, who was the son of this one, who was the son of this one. And it's very explicit. It tells you everything. Okay, and these are the records we have now. Can you imagine what we had back then? Anyway, where was I? Okay, I think I was on verse 37. And the posts thereof were toward the other court, and palm trees were upon the posts thereof on this side and on that side, and the going up had 8 steps. Verse 38. And the chambers and the entries thereof were by the posts of the gates, where they washed the burnt offering. Okay, so keep in mind, right, that when the sacrifices were going on, you had different altars, and I think that if not in this chapter, maybe in one of the subsequent chapters, it talks about the altar. But you had the altar, which is outside. You also had the basin, where you would wash the animals and all that. Because remember, when they were preparing the sacrifice or the offering, they were actually preparing it just like you would prepare, animals, right? You would kill the animal, drain the blood. Well, depending on the type of offering or sacrifice it was, you would sprinkle the blood upon the altar, or touch the blood upon the horns of the altar, or do something with the blood and pour the rest upon the sides of the altar. Okay, and then you would cut the animal a certain way, remove certain parts, the caul, the fat, the liver, and all of those different things. You would burn the fat to the Lord. You would cut off the head, cut off the hands, and all of that. And then different parts of the animal would be used, different ways. If it was a heave offering or a wave offering or a burnt offering or a meat offering, which would be, not really with an animal, but nevertheless, there were different ways. But when you're doing all this, right, you drain the blood out of the animal, you got to wash it, clean it. Well, you have, as you can see right there, the chamber for that. Cool. So that's verse 38. And that's the cool thing about that technology, right? Because you can do things like this and see all of these, right? Let's see, this is 39, right? And in the porch of the gate were 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side. Remember, the porch was this area right in here, as we saw when we looked at the first east gate. So in that area, in that space, it says you had 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side. So 2 tables here, 2 tables there. To slay thereon the burnt offering and the sin offering and the trespass offering. So you cutting up that animal, and you doing all that cutting, or you ain't gonna do it on the floor. And though they look like dots here, they were pretty big. Remember, the temple was massive. Okay, it was huge. All right. Okay, verse 40. And at the side without, as one goeth up to the entry of the north gate, were 2 tables, and on the other side, which was at the porch of the gate, were 2 tables. So 2 tables here, 2 tables here. Verse 41, 4 tables were on this side, and 4 tables on that side, by the side of the gate. 8 tables whereupon they slew their sacrifices. So I would assume it's either talking about these 4 here and then the 4 up here, or these 4 here and then the 4 here. Either way, there were enough tables to perform the slaying. So now you can see a nice up close view. Sure, the tables look different than that, but anyway. Verse 42, and the 4 tables were of hewn stone for the burnt offering, of 1 cubit and a half long, and 1 cubit and a half broad, and 1 cubit high, so length, width, height. Whereupon also they laid the instruments wherewith they slew the burnt offering and the sacrifice. Yeah, because remember, you would have the different, if you cutting up animals, you need, knives and all of that. All right. Okay, verse 40. Okay, we're still on 42. It's describing the measurements. And the video is 12 minutes long because it spans across chapters, right? So we're not going to go through the whole video today, in this lesson, because we're only dealing with the 40th chapter in this lesson. All right, verse 43. And within were hooks, an hand broad, fastened round about, and upon the tables was the flesh of the offering. So you can see right here, ledges, one hand breadth width. So on this side right here. All right, verse 44 to 46. And without the inner gate were chambers of the singers in the inner court, which was at the side of the north gate. So as we just saw, leaving from here, going onto this side. Okay, let me let that under. So it says here, on the side of the north gate, and their prospect was toward the south, one at the side of the east gate, having the prospect toward the north. So you can see the different chambers. The ones highlighted, I'm sure, is these two. So you can see the north gate, the east gate, south gate over there. Verse 45, and he said unto me, this chamber, whose prospect is toward the south, is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the house. Verse 46, and the chamber whose prospect is toward the north is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the altar. These were the sons of Zadok among the sons of Levi, which came near to the Lord Yahweh to minister unto him. So remember that the priests, okay, of the different families were ordained by the Lord, where the families of this line would take care of this when it comes to the temple. The families of this line would take care of this when it comes to the temple, and so on and so forth. Now, when you read in the book of Luke, we read about Zechariah, the father of John. And when it came time for him to go and serve, his job was to light the incense. And I believe it was either for about 8 days or so, if I'm not mistaken. But now keep in mind, where was he staying? Was he going to go there and go home and go there and go home? No. So they had chambers for them. Okay. Verse 47. So now we in here. That's pretty nice. Anyway, so he measured the court 100 cubits long and 100 cubits broad, four square, and the altar was before the house. So you can see a side pillar. What's that? Verse 48. Okay. So maybe let me go back. I see. Sort of zoom past that. Verse 47, which we just read. He measured the court and 100 cubits long and 100 cubits broad, foursquare, and the altar was that before the house. So now we're getting to verse, there you go, 48, which I think this was the altar right here that we just passed. Yep. So it makes sense where the cutting and the cleaning and all that would be more on the outside area, and then they would bring it to do the offering. Anyway, let's go to verse 48. All right. It says here, and he brought me to the porch of the house and measured each post of the porch 5 cubits on this side and 5 cubits on that side. And the breadth of the gate were 3 cubits on this side and 3 cubits on that side. So the side pillar of the porch, 5 cubits, and the width of the gate, 3 cubits. Verse 49, the length of the porch was 20 cubits, and the breadth 11 cubits. And he brought me by the steps whereby they went up to it, And there were pillars by the posts, one on this side and another on that side. So you can see the pillars here. These are the steps, and the distance between wall to wall, 20 cubits. Okay, and that pretty much ends it for the book of Ezekiel, the 40th chapter. And so let's see, if YouTube permits, I would link this video in the description, or not even in the description, the comment section, if I can, if it'll let me. And then if you want, you can watch it, you can watch it there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Ezekiel chapter 40. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kwadash. And until next time, Shalom.